Well, as the debate heats up over how many troops to pull out in July 2011, the president's top military men are hedging on that question of whether significant numbers should come home from Afghanistan in the next few months. But that's a decision and a direction the president may be heading. With me now, Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. He's vice chair of the Senate Republican Conference, and he joins me this morning from Capitol Hill. Senator, I want to play for you something the president said yesterday in an interview and see what you think.
By us killing Osama bin Laden, getting al-Qaeda back on its heels, stabilizing much of the country in Afghanistan so the Taliban can't take it over. It's now time for us to recognize that we've accomplished a big chunk of our mission and that it's time for the Afghans to take more responsibility.
Do you agree with the president, Senator, that we've accomplished a big chunk of our mission in Afghanistan now?
Well, I think we're not quite ready for the Afghan people to take over. I've been there to Kabul to the military training camp, and we're continuing to train the Afghans to do that. I'm not convinced that they are ready to do that quite yet. Huge progress from when I was there last year and the year before, so they're making significant steps in the right direction. But obviously, all the soldiers are asking, and they did the morning after they learned the good news that Osama bin Laden had been killed, is, you know, can I go home now? And I don't think it's time for everyone to go home. The debate is about how many soldiers will come and at what time.
And are you comfortable that that's what the debate is, that the policy, it's our understanding at the White House, there's no change in policy, but there may be a little bit of a debate of how many troops come home in the next 6 months?
That's the way I see it, and I know that that's what Secretary Gates and General Petraeus, who've been in Afghanistan visiting the troops the last several days, have been visiting with the troops specifically about. It's continuing the mission. You realize the Afghan people, I mean, they're classic hedgers. They hedge their bets, and they believe we're leaving, and then they have to be concerned about what's going to be left over with the Taliban. And what I want them to be left with is a country where they have their own Afghan people trained and prepared to deal with the Taliban.
If today, if the United States Senate puts up the Kerry McCain resolution on Libya, are you prepared to support it?
You know, they're still debating that, and there'll be debates and amendments, and we'll see what actually is brought to the floor for a final vote, and I'll make a decision then.
Where are you on this action in Libya? Do you support what the president has done up to now?
I think that the president had a right to do what he has done. I wish he would have come back to the Congress sooner, but I'm not going to quibble with the president on his decisions.
And so at this point, it sounds like that you would probably support the Kerry McCain resolution. It's not a binding resolution, but more of a show of support of the mission itself.
Yes.
That's a fair assessment.
I think that's a fair assessment, Chuck, yes.
All right, I want to move to the economy and these debt limit negotiations. Right now, there seems to be the potential behind the scenes that maybe the larger conversation on how to deal with the long-term debt and deficit issues, this issue of should it be 3-to-1 spending cuts to tax increases, all of that might get tabled, and instead a short-term, say, 9-month, 1-year solution of simply spending cuts in exchange for raising the debt limit might be on the table. Are you comfortable if that's what happens here, if we sort of split the talks into two and go down those two paths?
Well, I think that they're debating all of the various approaches that you've mentioned, long-term, short-term, a 2-year budget cycle, balanced budget amendment, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those things. With 9.1% unemployment, the last thing we ought to be talking about is raising taxes. That's the last thing that the job creators of this country need are more impediments to create jobs. The American people, and you saw the front page stories today, are very discouraged about the economy, and the economy is made worse by this president and this administration. Unemployment's gone from 7.9 to 9.1%. Another 2.5 million jobs have been lost. The cost of gasoline, the pain at the pump is worse because of, I believe, the policies of this administration. We need to focus on jobs and the economy and the debt and the spending. And the number one concern is the spending.
Well, right now, I just want to let our viewers know and our listeners on radio know that we're showing pictures of the welcome ceremony, the official welcome ceremony for the official visit of German Chancellor Angela Merkel. One final question for you, Senator Barrasso. You know, one of the reasons why the unemployment numbers have been hit pretty hard over the last 6 months is that there's been a continuing loss of jobs in the public sector on the state and local level because there's no more federal government stimulus. Is that a concern to you at all that in the short term, there's some parts of this economy that are going to get hit even harder?
My concern is there's no certainty for the private sector. This administration has made it harder and more expensive to create private sector jobs in this country. And as long as there is that much uncertainty with increased costs and mandates, that's not the sort of thing that we need for a recovery. What we need is more certainty, and you can do that in terms of energy costs, mandates, things that come out of Washington that I think are making it more expensive to create jobs.
All right, this is to be continued. Senator John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming, member of the Senate leadership. Thanks very much for joining me this morning.
Thanks, Chuck.